In the previous video, we started to create that right-hand beam. Now this is one of the more complicated parts, so it's a little bit drawn out, but we can actually repurpose this part to create a few of the other beam parts later on, and that should save us some time. So continuing on from that previous video, we've got the basic beam shape, and in this video we're going to add the final finishing details. For the first set of details, if we look at the beam closely and we look at the holes, you can see they've actually got a wider hole around them, which only goes in a small distance. To create this, we're going to start a sketch on the side face of the beam. So select the face of the beam by left clicking, and then from the menu that pops up, choose Sketch. Then select the edge of all of the circles. So remember, you need to hold down Control to select multiple items. We also want to select the slot here, and you'll need to select the 4 different elements of it separately. So there's 2 curved edges, and then there's 2 straight lines connecting them. Now we want to offset these edges so we can make that slightly larger cut. But sometimes you'll find with the Offset Entities tool, when you select the tool and try to offset, sometimes it doesn't seem to work like this. So if this happens to you, just close the Offset Entities tool. We've still got all of those edges selected, and then instead of Offset, choose Convert Entities. So we've now converted all of those edges into new sketch entities. We can then select all of those sketch entities. You can do this by pressing Ctrl A, which is select all, or you can just drag a box around all of them. And now we can offset those converted edges. So sometimes if you select an edge directly and try and offset it, it won't work. But if you convert it first and then offset that converted line, it will work. So we're going to offset 0.7 millimeters. And then before you press OK, here in the construction geometry options, we want the offset geometry to be solid. So there shouldn't be a check mark in that box. But we can actually make the base geometry into construction geometry. So if we put a check in that box, when we press OK, it means those original base lines that we selected will be turned into construction lines. So let's press OK, and if we zoom in a little bit, we can see those original selected lines are now construction lines, but the offset lines are solid. We can now do an extruded cut, and we've measured the depth of that cut as 1.25. Now just a very quick aside, to measure the depth of holes like this using your digital calipers, what you can do is just open the jaws of the caliper like you're going to measure something. And then if you look at the end here, there's actually a little tab that sticks out at the bottom, and you can use this to measure the depth of things. So after making that cut feature, I'm going to rename it as Hole Surround. The next thing that we're going to do is cut out the small cavities between the circles. So start another sketch on this face. And first we need to offset all of these circular lines. So again, let's select the edge of those larger circles. And we're also going to select the edge of the slot. Now with the slot, instead of selecting each element individually, you can also just right click on one of them and choose Select Tangency. And that will select all the lines connected to the one that you've right clicked on. So then I'm going to offset those edges. And again, if you find the offset doesn't work, remember that you can first convert those edges, and then you can select all of those converted edges by pressing Ctrl A, and then you can offset those converted lines. And then let's offset 0.55 millimeters. And again, we want to make the base lines construction, and we want to make the offset lines solid. So now we have all of those lines there, larger than the circles and the slot. And next, we just need to offset the edges inwards, so that we can cut out the correct area. So I'm going to select each straight edge in turn and offset it inwards 1 millimeter. And then let's do the same for the upper one here. And then the same with the diagonal one here, and also on the other side. And then finally just a short vertical one here, and also on the other side. So now we can cut away those cavity areas between the holes by using an extruded cut, which is on the Features tab. This cut's 3 millimeters deep, it's blind, and then in the selected contours, let's just choose all of those sort of hourglass shapes that are between the holes. So you should have all of those ones between the circles and the slots like that, and then press OK to create those. And let's rename that feature as Cavity Cut. So we're almost done now. One of the final things we'll do is just get the fillet tool. Let's choose a 0.5 millimeter fillet, just a round fillet, symmetric, and let's round off the inside edges of those cavities. So we want to select these 4 edges which are in between each set of holes. You can select them manually. You should also find that when you select one, you get this edge selection toolbar pop up. This will give you different options to select multiple edges at the same time. So I'll show you again with this cavity. When you select the first edge, we get this pop-up toolbar, And then if we just hover over, for me, it's that first option that will allow me to select all 4 edges within that cavity. That just saves a little bit of time. So I'm going to do the same thing for all of these cavities that are between the holes. So as we go around, there are other options on the edge selection toolbar. Most of those aren't really relevant to us. Let's just try and stick with that first one. So for each set of cavities, we can choose 4 edges at the same time. So it might take a little bit of time to select these. You might need to spin your model around a little bit as we go around the corner to help you select the correct edges. And if you find that you select the wrong face or the edge, just click on it again to deselect it. And when you've got all of them, it should look something like this. We've got all of those internal corners there. But we're going to leave the ones on the edge here for now because we're going to mirror these fillets over. And if we mirrored those, it would cause a problem because they actually go all the way through. So press OK to create those fillets and it should look something like this. So we've got all of the detail that we need on this first side, but we don't have any of it on the opposite side. But because we used a mid-plane extrude, we can actually just mirror everything over. So let's select the front plane by left clicking. Then let's also hold down Control and select those 3 latest features. So it's the whole surround, the cavity cut and the fillet. So we should have 3 items selected as well as the front plane. Then we can press mirror and we can see we get a yellow preview like this. For the mirror plane, we've got that front plane that we selected. And then for the features to mirror, we've got the whole surround, the cavity cut and the fillet. If you find that your preview or your mirror doesn't work, try going back into that first feature and just making sure that you've got a mid-plane extrude there instead of a blind extrude. That just makes sure that the front plane is at the middle of the model so we can use it to mirror these items over. Press OK, and now we can see that we've mirrored those features over onto the other side. Then the final thing that we need to do to finish off is just use the fillet tool again, keep the same settings. So it's 0.5 size, it's a symmetric round fillet, and we're just going to get these 4 edges here on the left. And the reason that we didn't add these to the previous fillet before we did the mirror is because these fillets actually go all the way through. So we can't actually mirror them through if they're already all the way through. And then going up here to the top, there's another 4 on this side. So there should be 8 edges in total. And then press OK to create that fillet feature. Now we have created that beam part. And the final thing I'm going to do is just change the color of it so it suits the color in the instructions. You don't have to do this, it just might make it a little bit easier to follow the instructions if all of the parts on screen match with the parts in real life. So I'm going to open the Appearance, Scenes and Decals tab here on the right. I'm going to choose Appearances. And then here in Appearances, I'm going to choose something like a plastic, medium gloss, and I'm going to go white color. And then double clicking on that color applies that appearance to the whole part. And then the final thing to do is just save the part if you didn't already save it in the previous video. So as we mentioned before, I'm going to save this one as corner beam 7 by 4 by 3 because there's 7 holes along the bottom. There's 4 at that diagonal corner because remember that slot counts as 2 holes and then there's 3 on that vertical section. And then also I'm just going to put that reference number on the end, 30465. And there we have our finished second part. In the next video, we're going to do something a little bit simpler. We're going to make that friction pin part.